Hey everyone, it's Steve Contorno, political editor for the Tampa Bay Times. Welcome back to my living room on election night. I was hoping by now that would be able to tell you definitively of what's happening in Florida, but uh, we don't have a call yet. Trump is winning by quite a bit, and most of the precincts are in. We don't know why we're not getting a call yet. There's a pretty elaborate statistical analysis that they do to sort of figure out uh, why or who's winning and who has a chance and how many votes are still out there and whatnot. So at this point, it looks like a Trump victory is all but certain. Definitely what a lot of the prognosticating websites are suggesting right now. But we're not making a call because the Associated Press isn't making a call, and that's our sort of standard. But we can't say that um, Trump did much better in South Florida than I think anyone had predicted, and the polls certainly were not able to capture the president's support with the Cuban community down here. That we were definitely um, seeing all of the sort of markers to suggest that, but for whatever reason, the polling, which is obviously an inexact science, wasn't able to capture all the Cuban American support that Trump had in South Florida. Um, and while former Vice President Joe Biden has done well along the I-4 corridor, he actually flipped Duval County, which is the first Democrat since I think Jimmy Carter to do that. That's a really big deal for Democrats. That county's in play. But the story of the night is the losses in South Florida, and it's not just President Trump winning there. We saw Republicans win two congressional seats down there that Democrats had hoped to defend, but now Republicans are up 16 to 11 in the congressional delegation. It looks like after those wins down there. Also in Central Florida, the Hillsborough County, Polk County, Lake County seat that was up for grabs, currently held by Ross Spano. That went to the Republican as well. So pretty much across the board, really bad night for Democrats in Florida, really good night for Republicans, um, and a really long night. We're still expecting ahead. Obviously, it's 11:15 now. We're getting pretty tired, but we still have probably a long way to go because there's still a lot of states that have yet to be called. Results are trickling in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Arizona, which is where this race is really turning to. North Carolina is still close, and Biden, I believe, has a slight lead right now, but we are not entirely sure if that's going to hold. Just a little bit on what we've been doing here. So I've got a live blog going. We've been updating all night. It's actually been a pretty fun and interesting way to cover this and watch this election unfold. We got me, our Tallahassee reporter Kirby Wilson, John Romano, our columnist, all sort of weighing in on what we're seeing as results come in on Twitter. You can find that on TampaBay.com. We're kind of scratching our heads too about why this race isn't called. I think that's something I would have expected by now. But again, this is all stuff that's decided by people who crunch the numbers pretty hard. And there's going to be a lot of second guessing about how Joe Biden ran his campaign here. I mean, the Trump campaign, whether you agree with the fact that they were out there during this pandemic, holding these rallies, doing the in-person events, knocking on doors, it worked. This is looking like a blowout in Florida by what we were used to seeing. It's potentially much larger than his win in 2016, obviously, but maybe even bigger than some of the largest leads we've seen in the state. So the Trump campaign obviously did a lot of things right. For Democrats, there's going to be a lot of second guessing about what they did wrong, and we're already starting to see it. I mean, some of the the state Democrats that I follow on Twitter, for example, State Representative Anna Eskamani, she's already calling for a top-down review of the Democratic Party and saying we can't keep losing races like this. How is this happening? How are we losing down ballot candidates in races where we're expecting Democrats to do well? So you're already starting to see that reckoning That's only going to grow louder in the coming weeks, you know, and there's going to be a lot of second guessing about how Joe Biden ran his campaign here. You know, during the summer when we were starting to understand the virus a little bit better, why didn't they find safe ways to knock on doors? Why didn't they get the Hispanic community more involved in the campaign from the start? We were hearing whispers and not even whispers, you know, almost foghorns about complaints from a Latino activist in the state who was saying that they were totally disconnected from the Biden campaign earlier this summer. A lot of the parties said they felt disconnected and pushed aside by the Biden campaign as well. We wrote some stories about that earlier this summer. The Biden campaign though said that we're going to get our act together. We trust us. We know what we're doing. We have the data. And yet here we are on election night, and this wasn't even close. I mean, again, we haven't had a full calling yet, but the numbers right now just look like a total bloodbath in Florida for Democrats. Let's look at some of the questions you guys had so far. So one of the questions is like, why was forecasting so wrong? And I will say, like, we looked at polls and we looked at polls for trends this cycle, but I'm actually pretty happy with how our paper sort of handled polls. They weren't the end all be all. We really got in the community. We wrote stories about why the polls could be wrong. I did a story a few weeks ago about how Trump could be losing in a state where he's turning out so many people at his rallies. So yeah, there's definitely going to be a massive of questioning and second guessing of the polling industry in this entire country, especially if the problem isn't just isolated to Florida, and if we see polling errors, across the country, then what are we even doing? Like, why, what is so off about what they're doing that we shouldn't? Maybe we need to second guess how much we rely on them again. I think that we did a good job of pulling back, sort of showing you the trend lines. We had a polling average that showed you sort of where the race was going, but our coverage didn't really revolve around polls. We really tried to get in the community and talk to people. It was a piece of the coverage, but it wasn't the entirety of it. But yeah, there's definitely going to be a reckoning with why the polling industry was so wrong again. I'm trying to read through some of these questions right here and see what some people are saying. So there's a lot of comments about why. About the fact that Republicans were so effective with the socialism argument. And clearly that was a big thing there. It worked. I mean, you have a lot of Cuban dissidents down there, people who still have family or who fled the island, who are impressionable and were nervous about Democrats, turning towards socialism. Whether that was true, whether that was misinformation, whether the question still stands: why didn't Democrats have a better argument for it, or is there something else broken about how Democrats talk to Cuban Americans and people from Central and South America who live in that part of the state that they need to reevaluate going forward, or is it a lost cause for them and they need to find votes elsewhere? That's going to be really sort of an interesting thing for the party to sort of wrap its arms around going forward. So I'm still going to keep watching I'm watching the TV right here. I got another monitor here, kind of just running on all fumes right now and trying to wait and see that they call this race. We might come back to you later tonight with another Facebook Live once they do. In the meantime, again, the story of the night, Donald Trump winning Florida, it looks like by a large margin, South Florida especially, closing the gap there. Biden only winning by 7% in a county in Miami-Dade that Hillary won by 30%, was just too much for Biden to overcome in other parts of the state and really drove Trump to victory. So that's the story of the night. You can keep following TampaBay.com all night long. I'm going to be up to probably 4 in the morning updating you on what's happening. I got my dog sitting right here. She's going to keep me company. And we're going to try to get you the results as late into the night as we can find them. And probably by like 3 or 4 a.m., maybe we'll have a president. But if not, again, I said this in my earlier Facebook Live, it's going to take quite a bit of time to count ballots in Michigan and Pennsylvania, maybe even a few days. Those races, those really, really key states might take a while to be decided. So It might be a few days before we know who's the president. That's okay. That's normal. But in the meantime, we'll be keeping you up to date on everything that's going on here in Florida and around the country. So stick with us at TampaBay.com. Thanks.